And we're going to end off this chapter and, in fact, this class by talking about the interaction between psychological disorders and society. Now, this is a very complex issue. And again, I'll warn you that this is a lot more complicated than I can afford to talk about in a first-year psychology class. You could spend years looking into the intricacies of this interaction and different ways of approaching it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But we'll start off with the idea that for a very, very long time, individuals have pushed towards institutionalization. The idea that anyone who was considered psychologically abnormal should be grouped together and housed together somewhere away from the public eye. So put into some kind of hospital or institution where they could be kept together and cared for separately from society. So this was the idea of institutionalization. And this was fairly common, where even in, say, the 1800s and into the 1900s, there was a pretty strong push to push funding into institutions that would just take care of individuals who were abnormal in some way so that society didn't have to deal with them. However, what we're going to start looking at is the push for deinstitutionalization. Now, this is going to come into importance around the 1960s. And this is because we started to see different kinds of treatment that could allow individuals who had previously been stuck in institutions or hospitals to finally go out into the world and live their normal lives. So there was this movement to transfer this treatment to the community. So rather than tying people to an institution, instead of locking them up, allow them to enter society as fully functional individuals. And so we see this dramatic shift where in the 1950s, we had about 77% of individuals who had psychiatric disorders who were treated as inpatients, meaning they were kept in hospitals or institutions. But more recently, in the 1990s, this number had dropped to 27%. So that is a substantial decrease in the number of individuals who were kept in institutions. Now, this is a good concept because it's allowing people to remain in their social and work environments and to be treated with minimal disruptions to their lives. They don't have to be kept locked away. They don't have to be stuck in institutions. They can live their lives and be treated properly out in their own communities where they have their own support systems and their own way of living. The problem here is that for this to work effectively, it needs these mental health care facilities and resources to be available in the community. So individuals who are living their lives need to have access to their mental health care in their community. They don't have to, or they need to not have to go somewhere to find their treatment. They need to not have to fight for treatment. Otherwise, we encounter what's called the revolving door phenomenon. And this is basically where individuals don't get the treatment that they need when they're out living their lives, and they are sort of stretched to the point that they suffer relapses, where they suffer behavior that requires them to be hospitalized. And then when they are hospitalized, they can restabilize, they can be re-released and go back to living their lives. But without their support system, without their mental health care facilities, they sort of work through that cycle again. And so this disruption, this hospitalization out in the world and hospitalization and back and forth leads to a large number of individuals who live on the streets because they can't maintain a normal life, because they're spending a lot of time in hospitals and then they're put out back into the world with no support. In terms of statistics, the US may have as many as 1 million homeless people. And it's estimated that up to a third of them have some severe mental disorder. Usually schizophrenia is the most common to see in individuals who live on the streets. And that is huge. So as appealing as this idea of deinstitutionalization is, the other resources need to be there. There need to be things like easy access to mental health care facilities, to those kinds of support centers, and all those different resources to make it an actual usable and functional approach to handling mental health crises. Another interesting aspect that we can talk about in terms of mental health and society is the idea of preventative mental health. So, most of what we've talked about so far has specifically related to how we treat and deal with mental health issues, with disorders, once they've happened. But we can also talk about the other side of things. How do we try and prevent these disorders from developing? How do we stop mental health issues from arising? You may have heard the saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, where in a lot of cases, preventative measures have ended up costing some money, but end up saving money in the long term, because by preventing any problems that might arise downstream, they're actually costing a lot less than what would have happened otherwise. One of the major types of prevention that we can talk about is situation-focused prevention. And this is where we strive to reduce or eliminate environmental causes of different disorders, or at enhancing situational factors that help prevent disorders. So remove the bad and encourage the good to try and prevent the development of disorders. Psychologist George Albee had proposed that in order to go through this kind of prevention, we should focus our efforts on reducing the stresses of unemployment, trying to end economic exploitation, reducing discrimination, and ending poverty. So, by trying to fix society and the stresses that come from those aspects of society, we can help reduce the effects that come from. Because a lot of those stressors are what drives psychological disorders in the future. And research has shown that programs that are designed to try and enhance the functioning of families, that try and reduce stress within organizations, provide better educational opportunities, and even help people develop a sense of connection to others in their community, have shown to help prevent the development of different behavioral disorders. So, definitely a course of action to keep taking. Rather than focusing just on the environment, we could also focus on the individual, which is where our competency-focused prevention comes in. And this kind of prevention is designed to increase personal resources and coping skills. So by helping people handle stressful situations better, by giving them tools to cope with their lives better, we can reduce the amount of stress that they experience and therefore reduce any psychological disorders that they might develop because of those overwhelming amounts of stress. And apparently we're ending on duplicate slides of the same thing that I just said, which is a little bit anticlimactic. But as you can imagine, this is one of those topics that we could spend a lot of time talking about the benefits and the best ways to go about preventing and setting up the environment to encourage people to not develop disorders. But there are entire courses on that topic. So I will leave it here so you have less to know for the final exam. I hope you enjoyed, and I will chat with you guys later.